Really pushing those. What are you gonna commission?
I got they were the share pack. I don't need any more. If you can't.
Okay, it's 7:06 and we are going to start our executive committee meeting minute. It's Wednesday, January 4th. And we don't take roll for these meetings, do we? No, okay. All right, I've been on vacation. I've been on vacation.
But not yet.
Okay, so we call our meeting to order. The governance model, I wanted to keep that on here because we said we would. But there's really nothing further. I kind of want to wait till we formalize the budget because I really think, I'm sorry, not the budget, the strategic plan. Because I think that the categories, the pillars that we're using are very similar to what is in that book. And then I think that will kind of open that discussion a little further and maybe get us to look a little differently at how we might do our governance model. So really nothing, but I wanted to say that and that to keep it on our.
And then when does the strategic plan finalize?
I believe we're going to do
next meeting or the special.
Yeah.
So we'll be working back with Brett to see whether or not we'll do it next Tuesday or the following special meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, the really the final thing is to come up with those
Metrics.
the metrics. And because we don't have metrics already established, they're having to be created. And we're trying to figure administration's trying to figure out what's the best way to do that without having to sort of reinvent the wheel. Where can we duplicate and get that data? So
I do want to add, Stacy, to this though
Yes.
really quick, just because you were here too, though, that how even tonight's meeting to me sold me on more of the idea of constructing how our board operates within the within our committees, because like we really do have a lot of crossover when you think about the I was just thinking about the course thing again, but how it affects personnel, right? Because it's FTE, which is also
financial
budget and finance, right? And it's even building and grounds and like where do those people go? So I think having more of an overall picture of what we're doing rather than having each unit separately operating within itself, I'm seeing more and more the need or the advantage really to having more crossover. So I just wanted to say that because before I was like, do we really need this? But I can see more and more of why it would be a good thing.
Okay, great. That's good feedback. Okay, so then the next thing is our policy update. We left it as we had gotten that list of all the policies that Neola recommended, and they kind of had an order of the ones that they thought were most crucial to work on first. And so this afternoon, Jim and I looked a little bit at the.
You voted them out.
Oh, he wrote it up. Okay. So one of the things that we found out was a lot of our, I don't want to say majority because I haven't gone, but I would almost be close to that. The copyright date is 2014, and the copyright date on these new ones are 2020. So one of the suggestions that was made is that we start over and that we adopt the new ones. And since we're looking at them anyway, that we don't need to go back to ours and compare what we had and go into this new one with the template, but that we would just go from the template and create the policy.
Oh.
Okay.
Unless we want it for reference.
So
Right, I'm not saying that you just.
are we saying start over on our policies, all of our policies, or just?
We are so far behind in terms of a review of policies that their suggestion was the most thorough way to do it is to go back and review all the policies that most districts adopt in some form. Okay, and that essentially is a significant portion of our policies that we would have. But we would be now looking at the most recent updated version that they were proposing to their user base, for review and adoption. And they provided us a year to get ourselves current.
So I'm confused. I think like Colin is. Are we talking about going back and reviewing every single one of our policies in the next year? Or are we talking about the ones that they supplied us? The ones that they thought were more critical to start? Like the
Well, so what they gave us was all the policies that the most districts have. And likely we have those as well. The
Mhm.
difference is that those policies that are in our current manual are copyright 2014.
Right.
And Neola came out with copyright 2020
Right.
or
Mhm.
2021. And so for us to go back now and just change the date on these, there's no, I should say there are probably so many significant changes with the way that it was written and the new legal language, things in it like that, that if we compared them side by side, we'd be doing way more work than,
Right.
You could be reviewing something that's already been revised 2 or 3 times.
Oh, right. No, but what I'm asking, I guess, is are we talking about doing this with all of our policies for this year, or like what number of policies what is our goal this year for number of policies to look at, and like how are we going to divide and conquer this? Those are my questions.
That was that sheet then.
right, my first thing would say, I really would say all of them, and that sheet is all of them. But then what they did on top of that was they said, start with these 13, because these 13 are ones that are super important, and that if you ever, have to,
The legal compliance in terms of.
Right,
you
want it to be-
One.
correct.
Yeah, I just was concerned about like going through all of our policies from, the smallest of policies, and that might not be something that's very significant to deal with right now. So yeah,
Right, so that's why we would start at the most,
the 13.
the significant ones, but overall, we would make sure we were totally updated on everything. And remember, a lot of them are crossover. So one affects another one
Right.
in maybe a slight way in a different chapter. So there's that too.
Yeah, we absolutely have to start working on this. So how are we going to divide this up then?
Let me answer Colin's question and then.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. So one, is there an increased cost by scrapping and going? Is there going to be a cost that's associated? That we would not see.
There's a reasonable cost, that we would pay depending on how much time they banked or whatever. So they would give us some allowance depending on what's banked, and I'm trying to figure out that with Neola, okay? But it would be not the expenses if we were just signing up with Neola, say, let's insert all these policies. So they've already spent time reviewing and updating and providing this information that we haven't followed up on.
Okay.
Okay, so they are incurring more costs.
So it's not an
They're-
upsell for them.
No,
Okay. Second would be policy gap. By replacing, I have a concern if we were to, I guess, look at just brand new policies across the board, would we be leaving out policy that has been supporting us that they don't have in
well,
there?
no, here's, so they provided us a list that the majority
remember
of
seeing
the
the-
districts, have all adopted some version of this, okay? And they identified though 15 or 17, they're saying you should really put these in place right away, okay?
Mhm.
So that's what we would take care of right away. Then we would go through this list and determine how do we want to go through this list. And then at the end, I would compare that list to our existing policy to see if anything's been missed.
Okay.
So that we would, then it would be a total sweep. That we have touched base with every policy that we have.
And then the other one to that is processes. So we're going to be, I know like because we have, and we do, so many different things going on right now where we have processes that are being put forward to shore up how this is done and process how this is done, just to kind of streamline our system. And then we're bringing in the SFA, if that moves forward, that process. Are those processes going to be instituted into policy? Because I know Neola doesn't touch on any of that stuff.
The answer is no. I mean, that would be part of a
That's.
procedural manual, you know,
So how do we institute, I mean, what's the point in even putting forward processes if it's not in policy to follow them?
You know, I mean, you're gonna have procedural processes that aren't gonna be in policy.
Right. But I mean, shouldn't we have policy that is tied to our processes? Isn't that kind of a smooth transition of way things are done? Because if we're going to be revamping all of our policy, we should have the processes that we put forward, and we hold people to following them, because otherwise there's no point in doing that.
Well, there's, you know, a lot of your policies are triggered because of references into statute, you know, that, you know, there's certain requirements, you know, for you to.
Legal liability, yeah.
So, and some say you don't even need that, except for the fact that what it does is it puts it into your system so that it's easier that, you know, than scrolling through statutes, you know, to look for, you know, what laws are impacting us to make sure that we've got something in place. So this kind of sets that up, you know, for that.
let me give an example, I think, of what you're talking about. So like when we did the code of conduct policy and procedure is not in our policy. It says, follow the code of conduct, refer to the code of conduct. I'm sure there are a lot of things that are in policy that are like that. For instance, we also don't have a set of procedures in our policy for what we do in the case of a drill, fire drill, or things like that. But does Mike Morgan have that? Yes. You know, Jamie coming up with, a curriculum rotation. Again, is that going to be in policy? Yes, because it does say, how with the policies, curriculums should be reported on to the board to determine their effectiveness. But the procedure that is followed within our district is going to be, within administration is going to have what that is.
Mm-hmm.
We just heard what was the other thing the other day? The 360-degree evaluation or whatever that can be used. Again, that is not part of our policy that I know of, but it is we have so many procedures, right? But I don't think that's a discussion for another time. I don't disagree with you that there should be a central something of all those.
You're operating within nuclear, right? So you do sometimes, or you do for your business, you operate within nuclear. Everything in nuclear has policy driven. Every single procedure, every single process, everything is driven by policy. And there's a reason that they do that. And it's because you're bound then to operate within that scope and spectrum, and you don't have people deviating. And as we move the district towards a process driven, that's the reform, what I've understood, I would challenge that we have those processes put into policy. And yeah.
I would. Go ahead, Kathy.
Well, thanks, Jim. I think it's almost the opposite of what you're saying, Colin. I think we have policies and then we attach policy to the processes. So if we put processes in place, if we have policies that relate to the processes, then that should be stated in that process. But not to build policy based on processes. Those words are too much alike right now. But do you know what I'm saying? So like policy is more about like the legal parameters of things that we are upheld to, right? Most of them are legal. Not all of them, of course, but I think when we put a processes into place, then we should, if there's a policy that relates to it, we need to make that part of the process.
There's two components in Neola, policy and administrative procedures. I think that's referred to as the administrative procedures. Quite often policies will direct administration to develop procedures to implement the policy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I think we're going to find a lot of void in the administrative procedure sometimes. I think while this is unfortunate that we're behind, it also provides an opportunity, as this new board has been formed and some of the questions that we've had, to be able to look at all these policies in terms of are they fulfilling what we're attempting to accomplish, and are there administrative procedures in place to make sure that those policies get implemented.
So the game plan isn't necessarily going to be to just go with that list that you, in the last meeting, the last exec put forward. The goal is to expand and go with all of them versus just that list.
Well, that list is going to cover a significant number that most districts have in place. Okay,
Yeah.
So one is we're going to review all these, and to the extent that they're going to, in these policies, it's going to be their last recommendation regarding here's a policy and here's some options that you should, that you might want to consider. And again, you can reject something, you can adopt it, that's all in your, they've just done a lot of work for you to say, this is what most districts are considering. Some support, some don't. Here are options, for that, so they give you a nice template.
So would we review each policy that we're replacing and so like it would be say
Right.
policy 5310,
Right.
policy I just despise.
Right.
And so we would essentially look at that same policy and
Right, so right now it's set up as PO 1422. So policy 1422, this is the replacement policy for that, for non-discrimination and anti-harassment, non-discrimination, equal employment opportunity. So this is the replacement one that they have probably for a number that we have discussing the same thing. And so we would go through this, follow the, it says, you can add this, you can delete this, pick this option or this option. So we would go through that and decide how we want it to look and then move it forward. And the ones that we have a number for still that are in this, we would decide, do we want to keep what we have? Do we want to ask Neola if they have a new replacement for it? Or do we not even need it anymore?
And we're not bound to their recommendation
Right.
either, correct?
That's right.
Because
No.
that's what I
Right.
did not like at all.
Right. The only thing that they would say, the more you veer off and do something, then you're just responsible for it. So what
We
they
are
attempt to
anyways.
do, they try to see really what they are attempting to do is maintain it for you. But if you start veering off, which we have in school districts do, but it's typically more of an exception than the rule. But if you change and modify them way beyond some of their suggestions, then you own all the responsibility for maintaining them. So when they give another release, they're not putting that new revisions on your template. They're doing it on their past template. Okay, so it just complicates it. You're just creating a lot more. They're trying to save you time, but it's yours. This is your, so we do whatever we want to do. You're just wanting to make sure you're making good use of this resource, or you don't use them, and you do it all on your own, or you do it with through another one, but you're going to have a similar situation.
so, and we are, by utilizing full on all Neola, we're not bound to only Neola, correct?
No, that's you're paying for them, so they're gonna be providing you things to consider that most school districts would, to protect themselves, to make sure that they've got these policies to help you govern. That's what it's all about, helping you govern.
Sure.
So I think, I had one district where our attorneys that we had on, we negotiated, kind of a fixed price contract, and part of that fixed price contract was they did our policies for us, And they suggested less is more because you're responsible for everything in the law. You start adding policy that starts talking to those laws. You've expanded that law to whatever you're saying.
Okay.
Because now you're requiring that. And they just suggested, don't put more into something that could legally bind you to something. So I think Neola is good because it helps, take it out of the legal books, the statutes, and incorporates them into a policy that you can become familiar with. When you look at the statutes, they're not arranged by administration or support groups or facilities. They're kind of spread out. They went and, they put this into categories that start making sense to you, bylaws and some other things. So I think the structure has obviously been very popular. They've really grown. Neola's grown where they put a lot of school board associations who also used to do this service out of business because they became more efficient at it.
Okay.
But again, it's your policy. They're just making recommendations. They're trying to help facilitate that. And a lot of them do that, but it's still your policy and you should look at it in that way.
So Stacy, what would be the plan for implementation to move forward here?
Well, so the first, the priority policies, there's 13 of them. These are all around non-discrimination, anti-harassment. And then there are 3 priority policies. And I can't remember which ones. See if I can. So I think, the ones that have to do with the discrimination, those to me all look like personnel, HR type ones. So I would suggest that the personnel committee looks at those 13 that have to do with non-discrimination and anti-harassment.
Okay.
Do you remember what I don't remember what the 3 high priority ones are.
Is there any that are from, because I remember the last list didn't have anything from finance at all. So is there any new ones that my committee would have to look into?
Let me see here. No, I just resent you that list too.
You got
because
it?
said you
You
didn't have it.
Me?
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay, cool. Thank you.
I think you should be able to click on that link that says.
List of policies?
Mhm.
All right. Thank
So
you.
they won't block you out.
I am in.
So,
Oh, yeah, there's some finance in this one now.
yeah, so you can see all those program ones, there's professional staff, there's support staff, students. Okay, it was 2 priority ones, not 3. One is graduation requirements. And the other one is English language.
Graduation requirements, huh?
So I probably would put both of those in curriculum. So Kathy, that's, and so here's what we're proposing on doing. HR, Tatum and HR made a Google share drive that's gonna have the information in it that you need. And we can organize it however we want. So my suggestion is that we organize it where you'll have a folder that says your committee name on it, and it will have the ones that you need to work on. It'll have a template, the template from Neola in it, along with our current policy. And then you'll know which ones to work on.
We already have the shared drive thing though, do we not?
Well, we have one for just us. This is one that the people that have connection to Neola's policies. Like Jim has a whole other website that he goes into on Neola to get a
Extraction.
history.
Also, what they would do is be pumping it
Yeah,
into,
we just extracted it down to put it into our working files. That's what
Correct.
we're,
gotcha, okay, thank you for the clarification.
So I think, the ones that are, that's where they told us to start, was with those 13. But I think, again, like I said, most of those fall into the, personnel. So we'll be working on those. And I would just, when you get yours, so, I'm, and Jim, let me know what you think about this, but I'm thinking like all these financial
Yep,
ones
yep.
that we would just get the
Right.
templates,
Yep.
put them in there,
Right.
and then finance committee needs to decide
Right.
how you're going to get those done in X period of time.
I would, if we look at that list, if you think about, if we've got a year, so if we
Right.
want to try to get this done in 8 months to 10 months or whatever.
Right.
We find out, of this list, let's break it out into what committees do they belong to, even though we're talking potentially of changing committees.
Right.
Okay, but then it would be, okay, pace yourself out and decide to do so many, at every meeting, get your meeting scheduled in advance, as we used to. I mean, all the stuff would start fitting in, and now you've got routine business and, it's already teed up for you to review. There could obviously be new things that come up during this year, because Neola typically gives out 2 releases a year, plus any special things that might come to, a new law gets passed and something has to be done. They will insert that too. But typically there's 2 releases of policy revisions to consider a year.
So are we gonna have a specific person to be the point of, are you gonna be the? point of contact
What I
for when
would do
those-
here is work with Stacy, to the extent of how easy might this be to take this whole list
Mhm.
and divide it up,
Mhm.
okay? And then we would make sure that each committee has their places where we can dump, we can put these policies
And
for
when
your
your
review.
committee is reviewed it and ready to come to the board,
Right.
then it's off your plate.
Boom. Okay,
Right. So I will look to, figure out how to kind of schedule this out, in terms of Stacy and I can look at these policies. So what is this? 3-4 page list of policies.
but do we have a point of contact for when there's
What I
updates
would
to?
have for any committee would be an administrator assigned to assist.
Okay, so then the admit, like, so say
So
for
curriculum,
finance,
it
Angela,
would be Jamie, and her staff working with Kathy,
okay,
just like you've kind of done in the past.
okay.
Now, some of the things, again, like free and reduced meals, those are all under operations, school safety. The school safety probably could go to buildings and grounds. And then some of these that don't really have a real good fit, then we would stick at exec.
Okay. Are these, so when because we would have so many policies being changed, I guess, I think are we putting out notification when our policies change to our staff?
That is something we can easily do.
Okay.
It would be, beneficial, to somehow notify people, because just like the law, you're responsible whether or not you know it or not.
Right,
So alerting people in terms whenever there's a change would be a beneficial practice, and particularly with how many we're going to be doing, I think that would be good.
Mhm.
Um,
And it's another opportunity for people to brush up on what our policies.
Well,
are.
that's right. I mean, because everybody's responsible for that. If it impacts something you do, if it addresses, somehow, this is a requirement, that you need to be aware of, you need to be aware of it. So, yes.
Do we have a mechanism to request policy changes by staff currently?
What do you mean?
Like say for example, we have the conflict of interest, which is the first, or
Yep, yep.
if there is they really think that, hey, you know what, maybe we should have this, because I guess when you have everybody being a part of and taking ownership to it,
Right.
so a lot of times you have better product.
The only thing that I would suggest is policies as part of your governance responsibility.
Right.
You know, you're kind of setting the policies for the district.
Yep.
Okay. The administrative procedures are your directive to administration quite often.
Mhm.
You know, to spell out how you're going to do this. How are you going to fulfill board policy?
The
Because
re-
it's board policy.
Yeah, and the reason that I asked that is, like take for example, I don't know, like, hey, it creates almost like an open door ability, like, hey, I really think it should be this, and it kind of takes out the silo aspect that we've
But
sometimes
that's,
seen.
right, but that's why we have 2 readings, right? I mean, look what we
Right.
did with the controversial issues
Right.
policy.
No, okay, yeah, you're right.
And,
That's right.
and,
yeah.
You're doing this
and
in
so it takes
public.
the other
This
one.
is,
Yeah.
you know,
Okay.
you have, that's where you get your feedback, you know. You know, and sometimes you might solicit that depending on what's involved.
Okay. I'm on board. Yeah.
And really this could be, you know, with the, you know, with my sense of where the board is headed in terms of what they would like to accomplish and raise the achievement levels. And I mean, this is just probably a good time for this to happen, even though it's more work. It's going to be spread out over a year, but it's going to parallel these other things where you're going to have things fresh in your mind too now. You know, geez, we're just really been spending a lot of time on curriculum. Oh, let's look at this curriculum policy. What does that tell us? What did we say was our policy on this?
Mhm.
You know, so, you know, I think in many ways this could just be beneficial.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool.
Because you're going to see things, we're doing things, you're going to say it's important. Just like you said today, this really shouldn't be there. It should be in policy.
Mhm.
Can I add in or chime in real quick?
Yeah.
I have a line of, there's a guy on another board that I talked to, one of the top 5 districts in the state, and he told me that they reviewed every policy in 1 year, which was a lot of work, but they got it done. And then it was a lot less after that to maintain it. But that's what the winners are doing.
Yeah, and I mean, again, I think they're, talking about, what Tony was talking about earlier, right? I mean, there should be a policy in here of when people are reviewing these, right? I mean, again, we don't do a really good job with directives to our committees, and that needs to be something, right? Your committee should have a schedule for 5 years from now and what policies you're going to cover, right? I mean,
That's what some
those are the
districts-
kinds of things I think strategically that we can set up our district for success, because now we're looking at, right, 2014 and we're way behind, and
9 years ago, we should have probably stopped or not stopped reviewing policy. When
right, and who knows, but again, I think if the committee knows that, every other year, we're gonna look at conflict of interest. That's what you do in January, conflict of interest.
yeah, and that's got to be director driven.
And if there's nothing, that needs to be changed, great, then you write that did it, it's in the meeting minutes, and that's.
Some districts, along the lines of what Tony said, and just like what Jamie has been advancing in terms of curriculum review cycle, some school districts have put policy on that cycle. So every 3 years, they go through the whole book.
Right.
Repeatedly, so that
That's not a bad idea.
it's just a cycle to make sure that you're staying in tune with your policies.
Yeah.
Guidelines,
I honestly
not
like
that's
that
2
idea.
years, for it to do it all in 1 year is a lot.
Mhm.
Unless you're really trying to come up to speed, and, then like Tony said, it becomes more manageable.
Mhm.
But if you're doing it every 3 years where you're in an automatic recycle, you're gonna always be refreshed.
Yeah, or you're doing chunk, you do a quarter of your policies every single year. Period.
So, the way I see this rolling out is within the next couple weeks, you are going to have access to that drive as the head of your committee. You're going to get a list of the ones that your committee is going to be tasked with. You're in the drive, you're gonna see a folder that says your committee's name on it. And then in that folder, you will find what our current policies are in that area, and then what are the templates that we have. And you will set up a, making sure that on your agendas that you're going through these, and then, along with, when it comes out of committee, obviously, that Lori knows too, so she can make sure that it's on the agenda for the full board to look at it and revisit it.
All right.
And again, some are gonna be cookie cutter, easy, and other ones are going to be
Contentious.
correct. And there might be other ones that come up along the way as well that we think, maybe we should have a policy on that.
So when can we expect to kick this off?
Right now.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, I mean, I have at least the 13 for mine, but I will send an email out to everybody.
I will also have my administrative team, my executive team now look at these policies so that I can, we can do a quick read.
Mhm.
Where would we put these policies in terms of our committee? The only thing is if you change committee structure, you might have to redirect them.
Sure.
That would be the only thing, but, we'll start looking at that
Cross
sheet
that
and saying,
bridge.
okay, here's, with our committees right now, this is where we would put them. And then Stacy can take a look over and see if she confers, and then we can just start assigning that and sharing that and then if we move to individual committee folders, we'll do that, along with the process.
Sound good?
I'm okay.
All right, and then the last thing on our agenda was just an update on the boardroom technology, and I got just a real short thing from Brady. Brady said that that he's received most of the equipment for our boardroom. Once all the equipment arrives, that we can begin installation and testing. We're very excited about the upgraded live streaming and recording experience. This is the current statement that we have for the committee. So that is what we have. I do not know when the expectation is to have the other equipment or what that is, what we're still missing, but that's the update that I have. So
He was hopeful for within a month, if everything comes
Okay.
in. His goal was if the equipment comes in when it's supposed to. Like everything, his goal is, because he's excited about getting it installed and getting it going.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thinking maybe February
That is,
would be the goal.
yeah.
Can we get an
Get that in
update
writing? No.
in February? Can we get an update on in February if
Oh,
it's
sure.
not complete?
I ran into him in the hall and I just asked him, I said, hey, if you can just give us an update.
Yeah.
'Cause I saw that it was on the exec, instead of just like what's happening.
Sure.
He's like,
Yeah.
oh, sure. So
Yeah.
he said he'll share with me, and then if you're okay, I'll just share it with you guys.
Yeah, I think maybe Lori, when we do the next executive committee, just leave it on here. Let's leave it on there until it's done, and we'll ask for a little update from him, and
Okay.
then
Awesome.
we'll see where we're at. Okay, so that is all I have. Is there any anything further that we need to discuss? Not that we can, because it's not on the agenda, but just thought I'd throw that out there.
Future meeting. When are we meeting next?
Our future meeting would be the first Wednesday of February.
All righty.
And we typically have it at 5:30
5:30.
unless another committee knocks us out of our spot.
And when Chris was talking that he's gonna do like the first Wednesday of the month, like right before, like
Oh,
4:30.
okay.
He preferred 4.
Oh.
But he knows with Matt Phipps with his work
Sure.
schedule, so 4:30 to like 5:30 says generally
Okay.
he can. So the first Wednesday is February 1st. in
Perfect.
February.
Sounds great. February 1st, 5:30.
Okay.
All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Can I hear a second?
I said second, yep.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thanks, you guys.
Bye. Have a good day.
Yeah. I'll see you in person
Bye.
on Tuesday.
Hey.
Anybody want to start
Ooh, I won't
first?
be here.
Bye, guys.
I'm sure you're not right now. Sorry.
Thanks, Lori.
Thanks, Lori.
Thank you, Lori. Actually, you know what? I'm leaving these here. I'm gonna see if they're still there.
Tony, you have a good break?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Take time off at all?